So our combinations are a way to get this number that's at the front of our binomial calculation. And what it really says is, out of n trials, how many ways can we have k successes? So we want to know how many different ways can this occur. So we're taking care of all of the different possibilities. Our notation for combinations, you'll see these two forms. There's this form here where you have kind of these tall parentheses and then n over k. And just remember that n is our number of trials. And then k is going to be the number of successes. So we can use this form, or we have this n and then a capital CK. How we often read both of these is we say n choose k. So if we have these n trials, how many ways can we choose k of them? So for the scenario that we were just looking at, what we actually calculated down here, the form that we would have had if we had used our combination, it's calculated from 4 trials, and how many ways do we choose 1 success. So that would have been the notation that we would use, and what's going to happen is we have a calculation for this where we get an actual number out, and this would calculate to give us 4 out. So the formula for calculating our combinations, it uses the numbers for n and k working together, and then you're going to see these exclamation marks. Those exclamation marks are factorials. Whenever you see an exclamation mark after a number, it's a way of calculating with that number. And how we calculate with factorials, like say I had 5 factorial, what you do is you start with a number, and then you multiply it by each value that's less than this. So we go 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. If we had 8 factorial, you're taking 8 times 7 times 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. So you just start with that number and then multiply with each, kind of bumping down by 1 with each value. So to show how this calculates by hand, let's use our scenario for what we would have calculated with in the last example with the basketball. So 4 choose 1. So 4 is our value for n, 1 is our value for k. So in the numerator we have n factorial, so we would have 4 factorial, over, and then you take k factorial, which for us is just 1 factorial, times n minus k factorial. So we'd have 4 minus 1 factorial. And then what we want to do is expand it out. So 4 factorial is the same thing as 4 times 3 times 2 times 1, over 1 factorial is just going to be equal to 1. So that just changes to 1. And then that's multiplying with, let's see, 4 minus 1 is 3. So we'd have 3 factorial, which is 3 times 2 times 1. And what's actually really nice about these calculations by hand is often you're going to be able to cancel out a lot. Sometimes you won't, but like in this scenario, it's all multiplication. So if you see similar values, they can just cancel. So like those 3's will cancel, 2's will cancel. I mean, 1's don't really do anything, but in the end we end up with 4 over 1, and that's where we can see that value of 4 coming out. So that would be the work we would do in terms of our calculation for the basketball scenario. Once we see this, we would plug it into that formula, and that's how we get a 4 right there. And this allows us to now go, okay, what if we shot the ball 10 times and wanted to see the probability of 2 successes? Then we could use the numbers 10 and 2 there and plug it into the formula and calculate what would go there, and then we would just have to adjust those exponents as well. But let's keep practicing with these combinations. So let's say we had 7 choose 2. And this would be the idea of if we have these 7 trials and we're looking for the probability of 2 successes, how many different ways could that occur? So in terms of the basketball scenario, shooting the ball 7 times and her making 2 of the free throws. So with our calculation, we take our 7 factorial over, and then we'd have 2 factorial times 7 minus 2 factorial. So 7 factorial would be a 7 times 6 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. 2 factorial is just a 2 times 1. And then here we'd have a 5 factorial, so we'd have times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. Again, we can see how all of this will just cancel out the 5 factorial down there. And then we could even simplify, like taking 6 divided by 2. So really that's just a 3 right there. So 7 times 3 is 21 divided by 1. So that's our 21. However, as we get to larger numbers, like down here, we see that we're going to calculate this 100 choose 5, so that we'd end up with, 100 factorial over 5 factorial times 100 minus 5 is 95. I'm not going to want to write all of this out. It's going to take a very, very long time. So with this, we do want the computer to do it for us. And the best technology for calculating these is going to be Microsoft Excel. It has a really nice function in it, and all you type into the computer, if you're in Excel, you just type the equal sign and then combin, and then you type in the number for the number of trials, comma, the number of successes. So if we were in Microsoft Excel, if we were finding this 4 choose 1, we would type in the equal sign, combin, 4 comma 1, and when you hit enter, what you'll see is it just gives a 4 out. And then if we did that with our second one, you'd have equals and then combin 7 comma 2, and once you hit enter, that would just change to 21. So try that out with these as well in Excel. I believe Google Sheets has the same function as well if you're using Google Sheets. Equals combin, and then for this one you'd have 20 comma 3, and it should give you 1,140 for that answer. And then for this one, equals combin 100 comma 5, and this is going to give you a big number. Let's see, 75,287,520. So while we want to know how this is calculated by hand and what it represents, really, especially when we get to these larger numbers, it's going to be better to just throw it into technology and have it calculate for us. But what this will do is, if we have this function and working with Microsoft Excel, that's going to help us calculate this first part of our calculation. When using the binomial model, we're going to be able to figure out this probability separately. This number is going to have to come from Excel and plugging in this combination.